Oh, be careful, little eyes, what you see. Oh, be careful, little eyes, what you see. For the Father up above is looking down with love. Oh, be careful, little eyes, what you see.
Biblical truth or super passive-aggressive Sunday school song? Let's get into that right now. Hey everybody, I'm Nate Warnock.
I'm Andrea Warnock.
And you have reached us on Family Friday here on the Marriage by Design channel. This is a show that we do every Friday where we take a look at what God's design for family is as revealed in the Bible, as well as practically what things can we be doing within our families to bring them into alignment with God's design.
Okay, so today we're talking about a new topic, and we're talking about the influences of media in our life. So we're talking about how is it that media has affected our view of morality and the world and all that sort of thing. So we're going to be talking about that, kind of talking about influences in our life in general, and then how it influences our family as individuals, as married couples, as parents, and all that sort of thing. And then how do we fight back? How do we fight against the influences that may be influencing us in some negative ways?
That's right. So, babe, maybe start by defining a little bit what do we mean by media, and then maybe let's talk a little bit about what's the Bible say about this. I mean, why should we even be concerned about this at all?
Sure. So, what we mean by media is anything we're consuming that's on a screen. So, or print, or
right.
anything that's coming before our eyes
Audio.
or in our ears, you know? So, it could be news, newspaper,
What's a newspaper?
Right. Oh, geez. It could be shows that we're watching, or videos, little TikTok videos that we're watching. TikTok. Or just anything that comes across our eyes or into our ears.
Right.
That's meant to entertain. That's meant to give information.
Right. So we're not specifically in this episode talking about things that on the face are overtly immoral.
Sure.
Coming at it from a Christian viewpoint. In other words, we're not talking about pornography today. Right? We're talking about media that you can access, openly, which I know what you're thinking right now. That does not weed out pornography. And you're right. I mean, there are certainly plenty of pornographic things you can get into on Netflix and Amazon Prime and all the rest.
And of course that's going to affect you.
Yeah, that's right. And we're going to talk about those things. But I mean, specific pornography, we're not talking about that necessarily today.
Right.
But what I wanted to start with was reading a portion of Matthew. And this is Jesus talking. And he's talking specifically about be careful, little eyes. And it is found in...
Oh, did you like my song?
There was a lovely song. But by the way, so another thing I want to start this episode off with is making sure we're super crystal clear on, when we talk about these things, a lot of things on Marriage Monday and Family Friday, I don't want ever people to get it mixed up that these are things that we need to do. Guarding the things that come into our eyes and into our ears are things we need to do in order to go to heaven. Mm-hmm. Right? When we're talking about these things, we're not talking about them from the standpoint of, hey,
salvation.
Did you look at the inappropriate show on Amazon? Because God's probably going to say you're out when you get to heaven, right? I mean, we need to be crystal clear. When we talk about salvation, it is through faith alone, in Christ alone. Mm-hmm. That's it. So there's no faith plus, right? You either believe in your heart, confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord, and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, in which case the Bible promises you will be saved, or you didn't. Right? So you can be saved and view things that are not God's best for your life with regards to media and be saved.
Right.
Right? Now, there will be consequences in your life for going against God's best, but you can do that. In the same way, you can not believe that Christ is Lord and that God raised him from the dead. You can choose to be very strict with the things that you allow yourself to view, and at the end of the day, you will not be saved. Because it doesn't, at the end of the day, have anything to do with what we do. It has to do with whether or not our faith is in Christ
right.
Jesus.
It's not what we do, but what God did.
That's right.
And our acceptance of that.
That's right. So I always want to make sure when we talk about some of these things where, we're going to challenge you, I hope, to think about the things that you're allowing to influence you, your marriage, and your family. But we're not coming at it from a salvation standpoint. We're coming at it as Christians, we want God's best for your life. So when we turn to Matthew 6, starting in verse 22, Jesus says, "The eye is the lamp of the body. So if your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light in you is actually darkness, how great is the darkness? No one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other." So in that, Jesus is talking about how important the eye is to not just the way you think about your life around you, but who leads you as a person.
Right.
I mean, that's an incredible challenge to think about the things I'm allowing to pass through my eyes into my brain and into who I am ultimately gives power to those things to be mastered over me.
And of course, sight is such a gift, but can be something that can really cause us to stumble.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. For sure. Okay, so set it up, babe. We got, we always like to start with a little bit of contemporary, things we've seen with regards to marriage and the family. And actually, the one that we saw this time around is going to play a larger role in today's episode. So why don't you set that up?
Yeah, so Nathan found this study, and we both pored over it, by the Norman Lear Center. I want to make sure I get that right. By the Norman Lear Center. It's this really great study, long article that they wrote about it, where they surveyed people in 2008, and then they surveyed people in 2018. And the study is called "Are You What You Watch?"
Right, and I will put a link to that in the show notes if you want to check the study out for yourself.
Great study, super interesting, packed full of information.
Right.
So it's called "Are You What You Watch?" And it's talking about, does the media have an influence on people's beliefs? And has the media been influential in changing people's beliefs over this 10-year period of time? And so that's some of what we're going to talk about today. Just some really great things we found out of that. And
in summary, what did they say? Does the media impact the way people
for sure.
That's right.
In a great way. It impacts it. And it's also the media. So the media is impacting what people are believing, but it's also kind of molding itself to what the majority is saying too. So
that's right. So what I would suggest, and we're going to dive right into that study and go from there, but what I would suggest as a way for maybe you to consider where you're at with this is, I would say start right now, and if you're working out or on a run or whatever, then maybe just put the tally together in your head. But right now, think about what are the last 5 pieces of media that you've allowed to speak into your life, right? So it might be maybe you read your Bible this morning, right? And I know, Bible, we don't like to think of the Bible as media, but it is print media, right? So that maybe you did that this morning. Maybe you're reading some sort of fictional novel. Maybe you're reading an autobiographical novel.
Or
maybe
you listen to the radio on the way to work.
That's right.
Does anybody go to work anymore?
That's
Does anybody listen to the radio anymore?
Maybe you listen to the radio while you walk from your kitchen to your home office.
Right, to your work. Yes.
That's right. and don't include marriage by design in that for purposes of this. Right now, your last 5 pieces of media, because at the end I want you to go back and take a look at those and consider the influence of those.
Do you want to say what your last 5 are?
You. So my last 5 are the Bible and a really cute movie about Thanksgiving called Freebirds. Some YouTube videos about a video game called Fallout. And this article, this study that we're going to read. And some articles about a gentleman, a pastor here in Omaha that passed away this last week.
Okay, mine have been Freebirds that we watched with our family, and this article, and some Dave Ramsey YouTube videos. The church service that we went to this morning.
Oh, good call.
And I don't know what the other one. I mean, I'm sure my Bible was in there somewhere too, but that's kind of like spread throughout. Yeah.
Great.
And probably some social media. Definitely some social media.
Oh, good call.
In there too.
Yeah. So think about that. Just fix that in your mind here while we launch into this. So without further ado, let's get into this Norman Lear Center article a little bit more. So we're gonna talk through. We're gonna throw some statistics at you just to give you a flavor for what the article is about. So really, what this article does from a 10,000-foot view, and I'm gonna let Andrea dig into it a little bit more, but it divided the participants of the study, which there were 3,000 and some odd number of participants.
3,096.
Thank you. And it divided them into 3 categories: blues, reds, and purples. And as Andrea describes those groups a little bit more, you will realize it's politically based.
Can I tell a funny joke?
Yes, tell a funny joke.
In church youth group, boys are blues, girls are reds. We can never purple.
See, if you didn't go to youth group when you were a child, these are the kinds of truths that you missed out on. So
sorry,
good.
that has nothing to do with it. Anyway, keep going.
No, because on a lot of these shows that they're talking about, there's a lot of purpling going on.
Oh boy.
Right.
All right.
Yeah, I'm going to leave that. The rest of that, my mind was moving on other color-related analogies. Okay, so blues. So, babes, maybe start by just telling the folks about the reds, the blues, and the purples, and what shows each of them kind of preferred.
Okay.
And
so reds are more conservative. They have more conservative views, more traditional views on everything. Yeah. Or not, sorry, I was thinking traditional views on marriage, but conservative views on everything. That's reds. Blues are then more liberal, and they typically are voting Democratic. Sorry, reds are typically voting Republicans. So blues are more liberal, and then purples are either in between the blues and the reds, or maybe they're just so far on either side of the reds and blues that they feel like they're, the reds aren't conservative enough or the blues aren't liberal enough that they are then in the purple category. Right.
So the way that the study worked is if you gave mixed results to the answers of their political questions, then you got put in the purple category. So, like, for example, if it was asked, do you believe in a woman's right to abortion, and you said no, that indicated red, right? But then if they asked, do you believe in that drugs like marijuana and cocaine should be legal, and you say yes, that would indicate a blue belief, which would cause you to be purple, even though some people may be answering that question from the libertarian, the further perhaps right mindset of, if you want to do drugs, then you should have a right in America to do that.
Sure.
Right? That's kind of that libertarian thing. So anyway, they all end up in that purple category.
Yeah, so that gives you an idea of red, purple, or red, blue, purple. So yeah, and purple generally just kind of swung between conservative views and liberal views.
Right. So you said they did this in 2008 and then again in 2018. What did they find with regards to reds and blues and purples over that 10-year period? How did that shift?
So there was more of a shift in views between 2008 and 2018, shifting more towards the blue side. So people that were shifting, so of the people that shifted in views between 2008 and 2018, 72% of those shifting in views are more towards the blue direction.
Meaning they've moved from red towards blue.
They've moved more in that blue, in that liberal viewpoint.
Right, and in fact, this is one of the statistics they point back to as an indication that media does have an effect.
Right.
Because, as they've looked at, and again, this is not, they specifically say in there, this article was not talking about news media, right? So we're not talking, while they identified that, blues tend to get their news from MSNBC and, reds tend to get their news from, Fox, which you'd expect if you pay attention to these kinds of things. They were specific to say, we're talking about fictional television.
Right.
So, basically what their supposition is, a lot based off of that migration from red to blue in mentality, is that media is having an effect on people, because as the media, which tends to be fictional media, tends to be blue leaning, to use the lingo from the study, it is impacting the viewer.
Right.
To move to the left.
Right. Yep.
Right. So to move towards the blue.
Yeah, it totally is impacting.
So babe, give some interesting statistics. Do you have readily available, since just to get this out on the table?
Sure.
What were kind of the favorite shows of blues, purples, and reds?
Yeah.
And let's save the crossover ones to make that point at the end.
So blues, their favorite TV show, typically enjoy watching Modern Family.
Okay.
Purples, their favorite shows included The Voice, Dancing with the Stars, but they also like Saturday Night Live, which is more of a blue, they indicate is more of a blue thing. And Duck Dynasty, which is more...
Which is super interesting to me, because I do not peg the Duck Dynasty crowd and the modern Saturday Night Live crowd as being anywhere near the same group of people.
Yeah, but I think that you're seeing people who maybe have come from a conservative side and are maybe starting to lean more towards blue, probably doing the Duck Dynasty thing, and then vice versa, probably doing the Saturday Night Live thing.
Sure.
I mean, of course, this isn't like every time this is the rule.
It's a study.
It's an
idea.
Right?
This is a summary.
And then Red's favorite shows includes NCIS and Criminal Minds. And they usually watch Hallmark, History, and Ion Channel. So, for Reds, this is your time of year because Hallmark Christmas shows are like the hot thing right now, right?
Right.
Do you know what I'm even talking about? You do, because your dad watches them.
You're gonna call my dad out in front of all of our fans?
Yes, he's proud about it.
Okay.
No,
that's true. My dad is a big Hallmark movie fan.
Hallmark Christmas movies.
And spoiler alert, he would be in the red category of this study.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so Hallmark movie, NCIS, and would you say Bones?
No. And Criminal Minds.
Criminal Minds. Yeah. Good show, by the way. BT Dubs.
I don't think I've ever watched it.
Okay, so great. So as we talk about, and now one interesting thing, in 2008, there was only one show that this study surmised that blues and reds and purples would all come together to watch. And that show was House. Right? Doctor show, if you've not seen it, where he kind of, patients where no doctors can figure out what's going on, he figures it out. And he's got interpersonal issues and, of course, all this stuff.
Right.
But that was the only show that blues, purples, and reds could unite to watch.
Yeah, right.
So when we'll get to what that statistic looks like now here in a minute. So babe, what else did you find interesting about this study?
Gosh, lots of things. One super interesting thing that I found out is blues learn about their politics and social issues from fictional media sources, from fictional entertainment sources.
This is fascinating to me.
Right.
And if you've watched our show, you can guess which of the blue, red, or purple we would probably fall into. So this is a little bit of me speaking out of me using a red hearing aid and not hearing the blue microphone that the blue folks are using. But to me, it is a mind-bending thing to watch a fictional show and correlate that to real-world events.
Right.
But in overwhelming fashion, this study showed that blues do that.
Right.
And not only do they do that, but they watch a show and then they want to learn a whole bunch more about whatever the plot premise was of that show, but as if it's a factual matter, right? So if they watch a show about, someone losing their health care to, due to something somebody in the show does, they'll Google, can I lose my health care from blah, 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 and they'll read up more on it. Whereas, and again, maybe foolishly, but I watch a show and I go, well, that was interesting, but I never make the correlation from a fictional show to real life, right? Sometimes shows can be in our face about that, right? I mean, we've all watched those shows where it's like the guy talks exactly like George Bush or whatever. But for the most part, when I'm just watching a fictional show, I'm just watching it just to be entertained, which is also what this study kind of said,
which is another thing it said. So it said that typically blues are learning about their politics and things from fictional shows, and they're talking about it. So that's something that then they're talking with people about and learning about and all that sort of thing. Whereas reds, they're not using those fictional shows or media those aren't talking points for them. They're consuming and they're moving on.
Right.
Blues are consuming, processing, talking, trying to understand, all that sort of thing. So for blues, it's more than entertainment.
Right. So an example for this is like The Walking Dead, right? Clearly a fictional show. The zombie apocalypse has happened. It's about this group of people that are trying to survive. And there's a lot of really interesting, entertaining social things going on in there. But blues, according to this study, watch that show and they walk away going, hey, this character reminds me of this president. Or man, this character, that really reminded me of how this real life thing is happening. Right? Whereas the reds more go, watch, consume, interesting, show ends. That was interesting, and then move on.
But then I would say, because of that 72% shift towards blue, that maybe the people that are currently in the red category and currently in the blue category, that's what you would say. But I think that there has to have been, obviously, a significant amount of purples and reds that have been affected by
that's right.
the really more liberal-leaning media.
Yep.
To then start thinking about their political views and their social views and all that sort of thing, and start shifting more towards the blue side.
Sure, and we've seen, I feel like it's common knowledge at this point that we have seen a lot of directors and producers that have overtly stated that they're using the shows that they're creating to try and make a political point. And that was part of what this article is underlying, is they're being successful in doing that.
Right. They are, yeah. So the other interesting things are blue shows that they're the most unhappy and satisfied group of in personal...
Unhappy and unsatisfied.
Unhappy and unsatisfied with their personal, family, business, and social lives. The purple is the happiest, it shows. In those areas, but the blue is the unhappiest.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, and I was thinking about that for a while, and it'd be easy to just make, offhanded, comment about, blues being unhappy. But I started thinking about that and thinking, man, why is that? And well, I'm sure there's lots of different reasons. And I think we can be honest to say a lot of television focuses on difficult, trying things, right? I mean, even a show like Modern Family, which is a comedy, deals with, a gay couple who's going through the trials of going through, at various points in the show, through adversity and through discrimination, even from within the family at a time, and, dealing with the family that's falling apart at different points and has to really scrape together. I mean, a lot of these, even sitcoms are leaning more towards the dramatic than the comedy. And so, I think if, as they do, and the study showed that the blues watch considerably more television shows than the red, right?
Yeah, oh yeah. Yep.
And so I think it makes sense and goes right to what Jesus said 2,000 years ago, which is, your eyes are going to impact you.
Right.
Because what you're letting in impacts who you are. And so, it probably shouldn't be surprising that the group, according to this study, that's consuming more of the media is being impacted even in their disposition by that media.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Interesting.
Another thing I found really interesting is on the red side, in 2008, 97% of Reds believed in traditional marriage, a man and a wife, or a man and a woman.
One man, one woman.
Right, for marriage. And now in 2018, so 2 years ago, when the study ended, it was only 70% of Reds that believed in traditional marriage as one man, one woman.
Over 10 years, almost a 30-point swing.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Right. And you and I were talking about, go back 20 years ago, when we were in high school. And that's hard to believe. Go back 20 years ago when we were in high school, and shows like Road Rules was...
Oh, MTV.
Like, I'm thinking MTV shows like where they're all in the same house.
Yeah, it was Road Rules was one of them.
Road Rules is one, but then they're all in that same house, and
yeah.
I don't remember what that was called. Anyway,
yep.
At that time, you would have one or two characters on that show at the time that were homosexual.
And it was
on
edgy.
Almost everyone.
Right,
Yeah,
and it was like edgy. Like,
it was kind of a new
what's
thing.
going on
Yes,
here?
Right. That was, of course, before any gay marriage was legal. So it was kind of a different thing and an edgy thing.
Do you remember the firestorm that was going around when Ellen got her daily talk show?
Yes.
I mean, that was like a big deal.
Sure.
Because she was getting a voice into people's homes every single day.
Sure.
That was, I remember that was huge.
So then, and so fast forward, 10 years was then 2008, and we have 97% of red, that red category, believing in traditional marriage, and now 10 years from then, we have 70% of those reds.
Right.
But now we're also changing the narrative of what is acceptable.
Right. So what we saw...
I mean, it seems like media is trying to start pushing into a different narrative of what's acceptable.
Right. So that is one way we clearly see the media being used.
Right.
It is weaponized by people with an agenda, a generally liberal-leaning agenda, where they made a point of, guys, when you look back to like the 80s, even into the 90s in television, it was interesting that when you would see, and you probably remember, think of the Flintstones, right? The Flintstones, the I Love Lucy show, the Jetsons. Whenever they showed images of the mom and dad's bedroom, do you remember what that setup was?
2 beds.
They had separate beds. And you can find actual conversations by heads of media studios in America where they talked about that, and they felt like it was inappropriate to even show a husband and wife in bed together because it might raise questions with kids that might be watching the show about what goes on in that bed.
That's crazy.
Right? These are homes where the kids could walk upstairs to their parents' bedroom and probably see one bed. right? But that's how conservative these were. Then you started picking up with the homosexual agenda and pushing the redefinition of marriage, starting in the 60s with the free love and intensifying after that. And then we do the no-fault divorce thing. We just talked about that on our channel. And now you fast forward to 2015, where now you have 15 years of MTV and, not just MTV, but all the rest of them that are really pushing the, hey, people's sexuality is just who they are. It's not a choice they make.
Right.
And decoupling those things, which then led to this is just who this person is. You can't tell them one way or the other. Leading to 2015, the Obergefell decision by the Supreme Court legalizing same-sex marriage.
Right.
And at the time, I think a lot of Christians and conservatives thought, okay, well now they've won that battle. They'll be good. I challenge you to look up the number of television shows in the last, say, 5 years that have been, since 2015, that have been created that are pushing the idea that multiple partner marriages should be an acceptable thing.
Right.
Polygamous relationships is an acceptable thing. There are a lot of them. And a lot of them are very prominent shows, right? These are not fringe YouTube shows. These are shows on nationally televised channels, which is just setting up that next erosion of traditional marriage, right? And it has the intended effect as that's pushed out in media, as we can see from a 30% swing in what we have understood to be marriage for thousands of years, and in a decade, 30% of people abandoned that tradition.
Yeah, and the sobering thing for me is once, at some point, if polygamy becomes legal, then what's the next step? Are we satisfied then, or is there going to be more that we want to push for?
Yeah, and of course we know the answer to that is no.
Right.
There is no satisfying the sexual liberation folks.
Yeah.
And that's why we people on the right can get slammed all the time about the slippery slope. Just look at the history.
Sure.
It speaks for itself.
Right.
Okay, anything else interesting in that study that you think, hey, we should talk about that?
Interesting, but those are the main points that I want to bring up.
Okay, so here's the one thing, the hopeful thing that we saw in that study that I want to just comment before we jump into the practical. So, I mentioned in 2008, 12 years ago, there was only one show that reds, purples, and blues would come together to watch. That was House. What's the situation now?
Oh, well, now we've got lots of things that we can watch together. So, it says 5 shows have equal appeal for all ideological groups. America's Funniest Home Videos, Bones, Criminal Minds, Mythbusters are enjoyed by all the groups. And then Pawn Stars has a distinction of being watched but hated by all the groups.
So all 3 of those groups watch it, but they don't like that they watch it. So, babe, what do we take away? And this is actually, the study makes this point. But what did you and I take away from that as a hopeful thing?
Those TV shows are all about finding the truth.
Right. So in the case of America's Funniest Home Videos, that just is truth.
What's funny.
Right? I mean, you watch it and you go, hey, that guy thinks jumping off the roof into that bucket of water is going to work out. And then we see that doesn't work out. Right?
Mythbusters.
Mythbusters, that's about, finding the truth behind myths.
Right. Criminal Minds.
Criminal Minds, and what was the other one?
Bones,
which are both cop dramas, right? Where each episode they're trying to solve a mystery. It's about finding the truth of what happened. And then Pawn Stars, of course, that is also our sort of morbid fascination with the truth. That guy just brought in a bat used by Ty Cobb. Was it actually used by Ty Cobb? And then we find out over the course of the episode.
Right. Yeah. That's interesting that what we all similarly like is to look for the truth.
Right. That is definitely something that has been coded within us from the moment of birth by the Lord. Is we have a desire for truth.
Right.
And it really pleases us as human beings to watch people discover the truth or to watch things that are genuinely true.
Yeah. Yep.
It's great. All right. So, thoughts on that article? Love you to put them in the comments down below.
Yeah, you guys should read it. It's worth reading.
Totally.
It's fascinating.
Link will be in the show notes. I want you to read it. I want you to join us on Sunday evening at 8:30 Central when we talk about these. Give us your thoughts on that. What your takeaways were. But before we kind of close it down, let's switch over to talking a little bit about how it is that media attacks the family specifically. And we really found there are three ways the media attacks the family. It attacks us as the individual, it attacks the idea of marriage, and it attacks the idea of family. So we're going to talk about those three things, and interspersed in that, how do we combat those things?
So yeah, how does media attack our identity as an individual?
Well, speaking from the man's side, because I'm a man, as it turns out.
Oh, good.
Yep. So one thing I have noticed, this trend in media over the last, really since I've been paying attention, so let's call it 15 years, where it is really hard to find a show with a patriarch of a family that is not a bloomin' moron. There has been this concerted effort among shows to paint the dad, the grandpa, the kind of the male leader figure in the family as an idiot. And you can look from Modern Family to, Modern Family, the patriarchs are sort of the old, crusty guy that has old-fashioned, kind of bigoted views on people around him, and the younger father of the show who's just an idiot in pretty much all ways. And that's the character, right? That's how he's portrayed, and he does a great job. It's hilarious, but he's an idiot.
Right.
Same thing. You look at shows like The Simpsons, which I know has been around for a really long time. Homer, infamously an idiot, and it's his wife Marge holding the family together, right? You see the same thing in King of the Hill. You see the same thing in all of these sort of sitcom type shows. The man who, by God's design, was intended to be the leader of the family is just either too caught up in wanting to do whatever he wants to do, or too stupid to fulfill that role. And the message that gets passed down is, look, the whole running the family thing, that's sort of our wife's deal. And we just are here to drink beer, have fun, goof around with our buddies, and act like an idiot. And she'll pick up the pieces because she's a strong woman, hear her roar. And it's wrong, because it gives guys the impression that we don't have to fulfill that role of leadership, because who cares, right? It's funny when we don't. It's hilarious when I don't fulfill those roles and I'm just caring about drinking and hanging out with my buddies, and you deal with all the big kid adult family stuff. That's just funny, really, at the end of the day. And it's not funny, it's wrong, and it's a sin, and we need to knock it out.
Sure.
So, babe, as you think about how media impacts you individually, or the individual woman, what would you say about that?
Yeah, so it would be partially to believe that I should be running the family because I'm more able to do that. That's what media shows me. I'm better than him at it. That's what all of the women on these TV shows and in media in general are doing. And he's an idiot, so he can't run the family because he doesn't know how to raise the kids. He doesn't know how to do anything around the house.
Nor does he care,
right? He just wants to hang out with his buddies, have fun with the kids when he's around, when it's convenient.
Right.
Which isn't to say this is every show, of course, but
definitely a strong
in general, he's a bumbling idiot who just wants to bumble through life, and he's more than happy for me to run the show.
Mm.
So I think it influences in that way, and it does. I mean, I can, if I'm not careful, I can tend to think of you that way, which is crazy because you're not an idiot and you're more than capable, and it's just crazy. So
that's the point.
That's
the point, is that idea gets put in your head,
mm-hmm.
and it starts to take root.
Right. And so you need to almost like it's almost this idea of I have my kids plus my husband as an extra child.
Mm-hmm. That's a great way of putting it.
So he's half child, half adult.
Yep, that's right.
Kind of the way that it is. So it influences me in that, but it also influences me personally in that, my identity should be from my career and from how well I'm coming up in life.
This is what media is teaching.
Right,
it's trying to
right.
Teach
This is how I feel media tries to influence us as women, rather than my identity coming from my creator.
Yeah, that's good.
My identity is in how much I've got, what I'm doing with it, how well I keep my stuff together, my poop in a group, and working and being a career woman and doing all things. I feel like that's it. Like doing all things and doing them really well is what you see a lot on media, and never dropping the balls. That's just not real life.
Right.
So I think those are some influences too that are influencing the women.
Right. So how would you say things like social media and TikTok and things like that impact your identity as a woman, or the expectations of you as a woman?
Yeah, I mean, the expectations from social media a lot of times feels like if I'm not perfect or near it, I'm missing the mark. I'm so much worse than everybody around me because everybody else is figuring it out.
Yeah.
Like everybody else is figuring out how to have new cars and great vacations, and they can do it all, have it all, and life is great.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not my situation. So what am I doing wrong? And why am I not enough? So that can be some of it. Some of it too can just be, the putting down of men, and that in order to be significant, we need to put down men.
Right. So how do we combat these things as individuals? Because, look at, again, our purpose of this conversation is not, hey, once you're done watching the show, grab your TV and throw it out a window.
Yeah. No.
We watch a number of shows.
Sure.
And we enjoy sitting down watching movies and television shows and things together. So how do we combat these influences into our lives? How do you combat the things you're watching from redefining what your identity is?
Well, I think we have to be careful, of course, what we're watching as individuals. Be careful to probably not watch a lot of it. Not have a significant amount of our time taken up by media in general. Being careful what we're watching, and in our points of view, like, are these sources of media allowing my points of view to change? Because what you and I were talking about earlier is I have a moral code that I follow based on God and my belief in the Lord and His inspired word, the Bible. My life and my moral code and the things that I believe are based on that. And that's who I am. It's not perfect, for sure, but that's my desire and what we try to base our lives off of, right? If I'm allowing something in my life that then starts changing me, I'm losing my integrity and my moral authority if I'm starting to veer more in a direction that's away from the truths of the word and the truths that God has set out, because his truth never changes.
Yeah.
He is the same yesterday, today, and forever. So if I'm starting to change, and turn away from things that are founded on the Bible, founded on the Lord, then I'm losing my integrity as a child of God. I'm losing my integrity of being firm on the Bible, staying on the Bible.
Yeah, you just hit on something I think that's really important, which would be the only thing I would add, which is it's not just about negative things that you're consuming. It's also about positive things that you're consuming. And to me, that's how we combat the negative influences of media around us, is by intentionally consuming things that are positive for us, making sure we know where our identity is based.
Yeah, I think too, being willing to think about, is this impacting me? Am I changing? So I'll give you a great example. I had downloaded TikTok like a month ago, right? Because I'm curious what it is. I mean, I know what it is, but I'm curious what's on there and all that. So I had TikTok downloaded for a week, and there were some hilarious things on there. And there were some things on there too that were not good. And I made the comment to Nathan quite a few times, I would never let my kids on TikTok. Not ever. I mean, you don't get to really decide what pops up at you, you know? So anyway, and then after, I think I had it for 2 weeks or so, and Nathan was like, their TikTok should not have a place in our home. So I deleted it. So
yeah, and you did. It's not like you were looking at stuff you shouldn't be looking at.
No.
I just, you work through these things as a couple, and you pray through them, and you come to, at the end of the day, a decision as a couple. Hey, this thing is just not good.
Right. It's not like
there's no
for
redeeming
us.
Stuff.
Right. Right. So, anyway, I have noticed a significant, diametric change since the time that I don't do TikTok, and quite honestly have really limited my social media. The time that I'm in looking at social media, huge, massive change in my attitude towards the kids, in my attitude kind of in life in general, how I'm treating my kids, all that sort of thing. And so my big takeaway from that is, obviously it was influencing me, not for good. And my kids shouldn't have to they shouldn't have to deal with that. They shouldn't have to suffer based on my media choices. They deserve better than that. And wow, a 2-week period changed me a lot.
Yeah, it's huge.
For that time, it had a big effect on me.
It's huge. It's huge, babe. So, thanks for sharing that.
So yeah, just in my attitude and all that, it was an effect on me. So yeah, does media influence us? For darn sure it does.
No doubt. Yeah, so let's talk about, and we've talked a little bit, so maybe we'll just summarize, because I think we've already, funny enough, hit our main points on this, but how has media changed marital identity? And we talked certainly about changing fundamentally what we have understood marriage to be. Right. For thousands of years, we have understood marriage to be between a man and a woman. Right. Now, certainly, yes, I know. You can turn to the Old Testament and see plenty of people with multiple wives doing the polygamy thing. Although I would quickly point out to you, you do not ever see a case in the Bible where the Lord blesses that.
Yeah.
In every single case, the multiple wife thing was to the detriment of both the man and the women, and in a lot of cases, see David, the whole family. So while it's easy to go, well, we haven't always understood marriage as between a man and a woman, I disagree with that. We have understood marriage to be between a man and a woman, but from the beginning, people have tried to pervert that. The difference is, it wasn't until the last 50 years that media really got involved in pushing that agenda to great success.
Yeah.
Changing, marriage from being between a man and a woman to a man and a man to now, a man and a man that's now a woman, and, all that whole, hey, you love whoever you want to love, and don't let anybody question you because it's not your choice to begin with.
Yeah, right. And then our family identity.
Yeah, so, well, first of all, how do we combat redefining marital identity? And I would even go as far as to say the leadership conversation we had is a way that media has redefined the marital identity. Mm-hmm. That there's not, man, guys, I'll bet it's evidently clear, readily clear to you that the idea of the man as the leader of the family from a media standpoint is dead.
Sure.
Not just dead, but a welcome death.
Right.
That it's ridiculous at this point to honestly suggest that the proper role for the husband is to be the head of the family.
Right. Yeah. Or that he can be not just a proper role, but he can thrive in that position too.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. And thrive in that position not at the expense of his wife. Mm-hmm. Right? Because I think that's the belief. There's like this power struggle within the home, which is real, right? If we go back and look at the fall in Genesis 3, we see that was a part of the fall, that power struggle being set up.
Sure.
But the way that it's portrayed in the media is there's like a set amount of power, right? Like there's 100 power within a marriage. And if the husband takes 80 of it, the wife only gets 20 of it, right? And we definitely can't trust the man to only take 50 of it because of systemic sexism and all the rest. That's not biblical.
Sure.
The man can have all of the God-given authority and still his wife has 100% of her God-given authority.
Absolutely.
It is not a competition.
Right.
Yet that's how it's set up in the media. And that definitely plays a role. The other thing that I would like to point out in the media is how romantic relationships are portrayed.
Oh, boy.
Oh, yeah, this is happening.
Oh, boy. Sit back. Get ready.
How romantic relationships are portrayed in the media. And
what type of media?
Ground Zero. Books, say, by perhaps a certain
books
specific...
that maybe get turned into movies?
Right. So this is my... and I'm sure he's a very nice guy, so this isn't a knock on him personally. But I started realizing a pattern in Nicholas Sparks' books and then books that were converted into movies, in that it sets up an idea of what romance is that is simply not realistic. And it creates...
Wait, can we have a moment of silence for all the women who have just been told that the Nicholas Sparks romances are not realistic?
I don't even understand why that makes women upset, because here's the deal, women. If you're in a Nicholas Sparks book, you're going to find the man of your dreams and then die of cancer almost immediately.
There you go. If you find that romance, one of you is dying.
Right. Yeah, but joking aside, Nicholas Sparks, and he's just, that name is just for that whole type of romance genre. It creates this idea of this is what fulfilling romance is.
Yes.
The problem is that doesn't exist in any sort of sustainable fashion. Yes, you may have had a date with a guy that felt like a Nicholas Sparks book. You will not have a life with that guy that feels like a Nicholas Sparks book. You may have a God-honoring marriage with that guy.
Right.
You may have a joy-filled, happy marriage with that guy. It will not feel like a Nicholas Sparks book from start to finish, because that's not real life. And those books are taken out of the grind of reality and placed in the joy of fiction.
Right.
And so you need to be careful of that, because we know of a lot of people that get into that situation and then it's not a Nicholas Sparks book, and what's the knee-jerk reaction?
This isn't right.
That's it.
It's not right.
That's it. Yep, we got married. I thought it was going to be just like The Notebook. Now, it's not. There must be somebody else out there for me that I can have my Notebook experience with.
Yeah, right.
Right? And guys, that you're not off the hook on this either, because there's plenty of bro flicks that paint romance as something that it's not either. So all of those things we need to recognize. True romance comes from an understanding of what God designed marriage to be, starting in Genesis 2, going into Matthew 19, Ephesians 5, and all the rest. That's what defines what marriage is,
right?
Not Nicholas Sparks or any of the rest.
Right. So as soon as we can change our perspective of what romance really is, that changes everything for us and how we view marriage, how we view what love is, how
That's
we
right.
view our commitment.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay, finally, babe, how does media impact our family identity?
Well, I think having a family that isn't always in turmoil. It feels like media is like, there has to be a lot of turmoil in the family. Having a family that pushes against the norms of society is not what you see in the media. I mean,
It's a good call.
Having a family that swims against the current
It's a good call, babe.
is something that you don't see a lot in media. And as Christians, we know that we should be standing out from the crowd. We should be swimming against the current of society.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not really acceptable in media and not just TV shows, but in like a lot of media.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's one way. What are
Yeah,
your
it's
thoughts
good.
on that?
As I was thinking about this, I was thinking really a lot about how media can have a real emotional effect on our children.
Mm-hmm.
Not just, certainly your kids will see the things that you're watching. Even if you're trying to hide those things, they will come into contact with those things. And so you want to be honest with yourself about, hey, these things that I'm watching, can I justify those to my kids? Not that it's our job to justify things to our kids, but if you're you don't want to be in a position where you're essentially telling your kids, do as I say, not as I do.
Sure.
So you want to make sure that you're leading by example in that, because that will affect your kids if you're not. Also, we need to be cognizant of the reality of the matter that our kids are kids. And so the things that are playing even in the background when our kids are around, we need to be aware of those things. I'm thinking like the news, right? It's been a long time, epitome of the news that if it bleeds, it leads.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the problem is when you're 7 and all you hear is how there's murder all around you, the coronavirus is going to kill everyone you love, your school's going to have to be shut down, all of this stuff is going on, then we have to be honest about what impact is that going to have on our kids. We had a situation where a really good friend of Jackson's, who's in the 3rd grade, 2 of his friends committed suicide, 3rd graders, committed suicide over the summer because of perceived hopelessness with regards to the coronavirus.
Right.
And that is so tragic and so heartbreaking that these little 9-year-olds thought at 9 their life was so hopeless that the only thing they could do to get away from the sadness and hopelessness was to kill themselves is just absolutely wrecks me. And I have to, and I don't know their families also, I'm not casting any judgment. Tragic. I can't imagine going through that as a parent. The thing that I would submit for all of us to consider is, are the things that our kids are being exposed to in the media around them, is it causing anxiety? Is it causing depression? Mm-hmm. And look, we can't escape some of the realities of things like coronavirus,
right.
But what we can do is address them as parents. And for me, and then I'll let you comment on how you think we combat this, but for me, how you combat this is you must direct your kids back to something solid. Mm-hmm. And for us, that's God's word as shown to us in the Bible. We have to bring our kids back to, this is our foundation as a family, right? They may grow older and not believe the Bible for themselves, But as a child, it's a rock that we can keep bringing them back to, so that when they feel like the whole world is topsy-turvy and is caving in, we can be the calming force to say, no, we're going to trust the Lord even in this time, because He created us, He will take care of us, He will provide for us. Gives them that security.
I think another important thing too is to be the one who's filling their heads. You know? So naturally their heads are going to get filled with some news and some social media and all that sort of thing, right? But I want the majority of their understanding of the world to come from me. Mm-hmm. Because I want them to have a proper understanding of the world, but not in a newsworthy, like, sky is falling all the time sort of thing.
Yeah, that's right.
I want them to have a realistic, proper understanding. And so I want to be the one that's mostly helping them to understand that, helping them to grasp these ideas and talk through them and all that sort of thing.
Right. So, as we wrap this up, if I could conclude with one thing, it would just be a reminder that what I hope you're hearing both of us say is we have to be intentional as individuals, as a married couple, and as a family to ground ourselves to something more solid than the media around us with regards to what our identity is as an individual, as a married couple, and as a family. And it takes real intentionality to do that. And that means we got to commit to that as a family. And that's really what I hope. As you look back at that list I had you put together earlier of the last 5 media pieces that you've let kind of into your life, be honest with yourself about, are these things that are honoring or not? What is going to be the effect of these things? Right. And I don't want to overstate it, because there's like watching Fallout videos on YouTube, which was one of my things. Is that like honoring to anyone?
No.
Well, no. But it's also not, I can honestly look at that and go, well, I find the storyline of some of those games to be interesting, and learning more about them is interesting to me while I'm doing work or other things, to have that on in the background. But just the exercise of that, of asking, hey, is that something I should be allowing into my life or not, is really important. So often we just consume, and don't think about it. Mm-hmm. So go through that drill. Maybe do that with your spouse. Maybe talk you and your spouse about what the last 5 media that your kids have been consuming is, and whether that's something you want to have being poured into them or not. Mm-hmm. That would be your challenge as you go into this weekend.
It's a great challenge. Yeah, it was a good thought.
Awesome. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. Again, want to encourage you, join us Sunday night, 8:30 Central Standard Time. That's our Sunday Fun Day Hangout. We will be on Facebook Live, YouTube Live. Love to see your comments there. Until then, guys, remember, God is for your family. Have a good weekend.
Hey, thanks for joining us on Marriage by Design. If you were impacted by this video, like it by hitting the thumbs up below. Also, don't forget to subscribe, and once you subscribe, hit the bell icon so you can be notified when new episodes release.
Excellent. Also, one of the huge pillars of our show is interactivity between us and you. So we would love you to comment down in the comments below if you have thoughts about this video, or if you have questions or other things you'd like to see considered in the future. In addition, if you'd like, you can email us. That's marriagebydesignpodcast@gmail.com. We're also on Instagram @marriagebydesignpodcast, or you can find us on Facebook by searching Marriage by Design Podcast. Finally, if you want to, you can tweet at us. We do have a Twitter account that is @MarriageXDesign. Thanks, and have a great day.